Hey everyone, it's Jay. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I want to show you how I made this photo. Now, if you live in the US, certainly in the eastern part of the US, last weekend you had a lot of snow, and we did too. We had about, I'd say 14, 15 inches of snow in my town. Most of the day Sunday I hunkered down, but during the height of the storm, I went out and did some shooting. There's a small lone little pine tree about maybe a quarter mile from my house down the street. It's in an open field in the back of a neighbor's yard. So I went out there with my camera to create something hopefully a little bit interesting and unique. And I used a methodology called the Ventosa Method, invented by a guy named Ventosa, in which you take multiple images of a single subject. Typically you're walking around it, taken from different angles, and you blend them together in Photoshop. So it was crappy weather, but I went out there, I got my shots. What I want to do today, and I didn't vlog it, there was just too much snow and wind. I didn't want to bring my vlogging camera out. Got a little bit of video with my cell phone. But today what I want to do is show you how I created the image in Photoshop. So we're going to jump onto my computer, start in Lightroom. We'll bring all the images into Photoshop, and I'll go through the methodology, and you can use this to create cool stuff with a lot of different subjects. Trees are great, but there's a bunch of different things you can do. So let's jump on the computer. I'll show you how I did it right now. Okay, here we are on my computer in Lightroom, and these are some of the images. Actually, it took more than this. I think I took 27 or 30. I chose 19 that I wanted to work with, but if I scroll through, you see they're all taken from different angles. I essentially walked around this tree, trying to keep my distance to the tree fairly equal as I walked around, so making a kind of a full circle around the tree. Some of the images weren't as good. Certain ones where the background's more distracting, probably less helpful. But there's some really good shots here that I can use. What I want to do is bring all this into Photoshop. So I'm going to select all of the images. I'm choosing the first one on the lower bar here. I'm going to hold Shift down, choose the last one. That will select all of them. I'm on a Mac, by the way. I'll go up to Photo, Edit in, and go down to Open as Layers in Photoshop. And what this is going to do is, if I go over to Photoshop, this is going to put all these different shots on different layers in Photoshop. I'm not going to make you wait around for that to happen. It's going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to quickly fast forward to when it's all done. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. All the layers have populated. You can see them on the right, 19 different layers. And I'm going to end up blending them together. Now, I want to start with, for a base layer, an image that I think is the best to use. When I say the best, for me, it's one where, it's a sharp image. They're all pretty sharp, but really where the background is relatively clean and there's fewer distractions. So I kind of go through them all and see, and I can select or deselect a layer by just hitting this little circle here. So I'm kind of deselecting these and I can see all of them, or I can just click and drag down. So now they're all off, but there was kind of that first layer. Again, and I could look at them all by just clicking on them and seeing which one I think is best. Like this one I think is pretty good. Background kind of fades off a little bit. It's a good clean shot. So what I'm going to end up doing is using that as my base layer. So if I click on that layer and then drag it down to the bottom, it's now my base layer. So I can turn these layers off and that's my original shot that I'm going to be using. So I'll start with this one. The main thing I need to do though is to align these images so that the trunk of the tree in each of these shots is exactly in the same spot. I guess you could try auto align, but I use a different method that works pretty well. I'm actually going to use the ruler. So with this shot, with this layer, I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to click on it and drag over here and really align it with one side of the trunk. I'm going to take it again, drag over, align it with the other side of the trunk. So that's where it is. Now I also want the bottom of the trunk to be aligned with everything. So I'll choose the ruler up here, click on it, drag down, and I'll place that right at the bottom of the trunk. So this intersection right here in the middle is where I want the trunk to be with all of these different shots. So I'm going to go through a process where I'll click on the next layer as an example. So you can see this one is not aligned, so I need to move it. I'm going to click on my move tool up here. So now I can click on that layer and just click and drag the image so that it aligns perfectly. Might have to move it up a little bit too, but just to give you a sense. By the way, you can also use, I'm on a Mac, but you can use your arrows to move the image like really modestly to make sure it's perfectly aligned. So here was the first layer, here's the second layer. I'll go to the third layer. You got to make sure you click on that layer. And again, I'm going to have to move this a little bit to align it perfectly. And you know, when I'll get it close, but then I will use the arrow to align it, and I can move move it up and down with the arrows as well. And I'm basically going to go through this process with each layer, making sure that that trunk is aligned perfectly. Again, I'm not going to make you sit and watch me do this, but let me fast forward until that process is complete. Well, I've got all of the layers aligned so that the trunk of the tree is in the same spot with each one. And by the way, one other tip, when you're shooting this stuff, shoot a little wider than you normally would, because when you're moving the different layers, you're going to lose some pixels on the outside, and you want to make sure you've got enough pixels to work with when you crop in a little bit. And so I shot a little wider, and I'll end up cropping this in a little bit. But you can see now, if I start turning off these layers, they are all aligned fairly well. I would like to get rid of the rulers, so I'm going to move those back to the edge, and that will get rid of them from the screen. And so now you can see the different images without the rulers, and again, they're going to be pretty well aligned. I want to turn off all the layers except my base layer right now. So I'm going to click on the second layer from the bottom, drag up, and now everything is turned off except for that base layer. What I want to do now is start moving up the stack with different layers and start to blend them together. And you'll see what happens. So I'm going to click on the next layer. Right now, it's that's all you're seeing. And what you want to do is play with the opacity. I typically end up 15 to 20% opacity with each layer. But again, you're going to play with this to taste. You can make 140, 1.5, and really change it. And to change the opacity, you can go in and actually change the number here. But I tend to click on opacity, drag to the left and to the right, and that changes the opacity. So if I start with 0, so now you're not seeing this layer at all, it's just the base layer, and start pulling up part of this layer. Right now it's about, call it 17%. Part of that layer is showing up. And you just do this one by one. You gotta make sure you click on the right layer, but I'll start with the opacity at 0 and start pulling up to the right, and you're starting already to see that effect, that impressionistic effect. Here's another one I'm going to start with. I will take the opacity down, pull it over to the right, and again, you're starting to see that. Now, if there is stuff in the background for that particular layer that you don't like, for example, there's these trees up here on the right, you could always put a mask on there. I'm going to click on the mask icon, choose a brush, make sure my foreground color is black, and I can essentially just get rid of whatever's there. And I've done that a couple times with these, but I'll just kind of work my way up. Here's the next layer. In some of the opacities, I'm not going to be as heavy-handed. I'm just going to pull up just a little bit, maybe because there's something else in the image that's distracting. But you do want to use all of the layers that you deem to be good shots. So here's another one. I can pull the opacity down, pull it back up again, and you walk your way through. Now, you could always go back. If there's something you want to change, you can go back to that layer, change the opacity. You can put a mask on it to change it. Again, here now I'm at 18% for this one. Go to the next layer. This is good to do with a cup of coffee and some music in the background. Bring the opacity down, pull it back up. And if the layers aren't perfectly aligned, that's okay. It helps to create that effect as well. If one of the shots is really tilted, when I'm using the move tool, I will straighten it out a bit. And I did that for at least one or two of these things. I'll go down, I'm going to pull up to, in this case, I'll use about 20%. Almost done. I'll do this layer, opacity to 0. Pull it back up a little bit. That's 16%. And again, this is all, it's art, right? So you're kind of creating what you want to create. You can play with it as much as you want. You could spend hours on this stuff if you want to. I tend not to, but that's okay. Here's one where there's some distractions here on the far right. Some of those trees I find a little distracting. So I'm going to pull the opacity down. I'm going to start to pull it back up. But then I'm going to put a mask on there, make sure my foreground color is black. I've got a brush, and I'm just going to get rid of that. And again, I don't mind some stuff in the background, but you're getting a sense. Now I can go up to the next layer, make sure I select it. This layer, I find the background really distracting. I think I'm not going to use this layer. I'm going to the next one. Click on it. This is a little bit better. So again, pull the opacity down, pull it back up a little bit. And I think with this one, yeah, this adds nicely to the tree, but again, the background, somewhat distracting. Let's get a mask. We got our foreground color is black, and keep it kind of clean back there. Let's go to the next one. This one's pretty good. Pull the opacity down to 0. Pull it back up again. Just maybe this one a little bit less. Maybe something like 13% or something. I'm not going to mask this one. I'm going up to the next layer and get the opacity down. Pull up a little bit. Go up one more. We're just about done, I think. Let's see. Yeah, we got 3 more. I'll choose this one and pull the opacity down, back up a tad. That's about 14%. And again, you can go back, play with this as much as you want, and get exactly what you want out of this. You can use masking. I'm going kind of quickly here, but you're getting a decent sense. Let's bring the opacity down. This is a pretty good shot. Pull that back up. And that's kind of where we ended up, which I think is really, really cool. I still have more work to do on this, and so let's do this. Let's bring it back into Lightroom. What I am going to do is I'm going to flatten this image. I'm okay with this, and I've done this before, but I am going to choose all the layers, right click, and I'm going to go down to flatten image. There are some hidden layers. I can discard those, sure. And so this is going to put this all on one layer. Only do this, by the way, if you're super comfortable with how things look. And again, I am. So I'm going to save. And this is going to save this back into Lightroom. And I could do, stuff in Photoshop as well. I'm comfortable with Lightroom. Let's go to Lightroom. And there is the final image, which is pretty cool. You could see, some of the other shots, but then you get to this, Now, first thing I'm going to do is crop, because you see on the outside, you could see some of the edges where I had moved the layers. So we'll go into the Develop module. I'm going to choose my crop tool, and I'll keep the same perspective. So I'm going to crop in, move things around. I'm going to keep that in the center, keep it nice and symmetrical, something like that. I definitely want the tree to pop a little bit more and really bring some of that green back into it. So let's go, I want to select the tree. I think a good way of doing it here is actually going up to, I'm in the Select tool, and select Background. And that's going to select everything but the tool, but it usually does a pretty good job of finding the edges. It's not perfect, but it's going to be good enough. Then I can go in and invert that mask. So now it's just the tree. And again, I'm missing some of those edges. It doesn't bother me too much. I could always play with this after. But let's just pull back the tint to make it a little bit more green. I can also pull up the shadows a little bit to brighten it up. I can add some saturation as well. Also, the whole thing is a little dark. So I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to pull up the exposure a little bit, and I'm going to increase the whites. Again, it was a gray day. I don't want it to be too bright, but I'm increasing those whites. And you get a pretty good sense of that. You can go back in, select this mask again, and brighten things up a little bit if you want. You can add a little bit of clarity, which helps a tad. But overall, this is pretty good. I'm going to increase the saturation a bit. I think this is really cool. We could also put a little bit of a vignette around it. So I'm going to pull down on the outside just to give you a sense. Here, I'll make it full screen to give you a sense of what I came up with. Very happy with this. Again, you could do this with a bunch of different subjects. Great in autumn with colorful trees. This was a fun project for me. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, it helps the channel just to give me a like, a thumbs up. And if you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. And until next time.